everybody. Howdy, howdy. How are y'all doing tonight? My name, sorry, I got a little casual here. I lost my hand mic, so now I'm leaning in, you know. So I am an Associate Curator of Education at the Stanley Museum of Art, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all tonight to the second in a series of lectures celebrating this year's Grant Wood Fellows. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to thank our partners in presenting these talks, the School of Art and Art History, the Provost's Office, and of course, the Grant Wood Art Colony. And I would be remiss if I didn't also thank all of our wonderful museum members, donors, and supporters of the Friends of the Museum account. Their contributions make programs like this possible, and we couldn't do it without them. And here's where I'm going to put the hard sell on you, twist your arm a little bit. If you're interested in becoming a member of the museum or want to make a contribution to our building campaign, please come and talk to me afterwards. Also, the Stanley Museum magazines that are out in the hall have all kinds of great information about the building campaign, about becoming a member, about supporting our museum as we head towards that new building in 2022. So please come up and talk to me after the talk if you have any questions about that. Now I am pleased to introduce UI Professor of Painting, Suzanne Wright, who is going to come up and introduce our esteemed guest speaker tonight. Thank you.
I don't know if I need this. Let's see. Okay. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming, folks. Great to see everyone. Hi, Jim, back there. Okay, I would love to introduce you to our 2019-2020 Grant Wood Fellow in Painting and Drawing, Suzanne Wright. She comes to us from Los Angeles, California, where she has maintained a rigorous studio practice while teaching at UCLA since 2005, as well as UC Riverside, Chapman University, and Pomona College. In 2014, she moved to Pittsburgh when she was named the Krauss Visiting Assistant Artist Professor of Painting at Carnegie Mellon University. Her other teaching positions have been at Columbia University, Occidental College in California, and Cooper Union School of Art in New York. Suzanne was a graduate of Cooper Union, where she received her BFA and her MFA from the University of California, San Diego. She also attended Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. I'm going to mention a few things about Suzanne's work. She wrote a beautiful little piece I took some excerpts from. In Suzanne's recent body of work, through the use of Google Earth, she has researched the architecture, its planning, and symbology of Washington, D.C. Working from an aerial perspective, she developed a feminized version of the city's monuments. Her work consistently and rigorously critiques historical, masculine symbols of power. Through her art, activism, and collectives, she has been profoundly shaped by the systemic nature of discrimination and oppression, as well as the ways in which art can be a tactic of resistance and has the potential to change habitual perspectives and consciousness. Whew. Nicely done, sir. Nicely done. I didn't want to take that one away from you. That's beautiful. Her most recent solo show, Feminist Alchemy, was on view at Wilding Cran Gallery in Los Angeles, California. Other recent exhibitions were at the Commonwealth and Council, Los Angeles, called the Rainbow Control Room and Angel Gates Cultural Center, San Pedro, California. She has been included in exhibitions at Stevie Friedman Gallery in London, Stefan Stux in New York, Claire Oliver Gallery in New York, and Manya Rowe in New York. Her work can also be seen in publications including Cock, Paper, Scissors, Feminist Landscapes, Strange Attractors, Armpit of the Mole, and Art and Queer Culture in Phaedon, 2013. Wright has been an active member of various AIDS and LGBTQ organizations, including ACT UP, from 1989 to 1998. Welcome her.
Can I just go with that and leave? You and I, right? So I have to turn this on. And can you hear me? All right? Right on in the back? All right, I'm quite loud, so in general, so that should help. Okay, so I use this as, of course, a visual ploy to endear you to me through my dog. That is my emotional service dog, and I wish he was here, but he is here in spirit, so thank you, Gus. I thought I'd lay out the talk, because I appreciate when some people do that, so you're like, where is this going? Oh my God, where is this leading to? Hopefully it doesn't do that kind of thing, but I'm laying it out with activism and the aesthetics of movements, a movement, a paradigm shift, one of the big ones, collage, source material, and my empowerment series, which is older work, glory holes, disco balls, and more paradigm shifts. That's a good one, right? Selected solo exhibitions that are on the newer side, 2014, 16, and 18. New work and the blessing of time and connection, i.e. the Grant Wood Fellowship. And if time permits, I hope it does, I want to talk to you about my community engagement, curation, and rituals I perform and bring into communities wherever I am. So how do we do this? So I'm going to try to do this quick. God, I go on tangents, so please have mercy on me a little bit. I'm a little nervous, just, as you do, so let's just let it go. So I went to Cooper Union, and there's a picture of the late, amazing theorist Douglas Crimp and Rosalind Krauss, who started this amazing art theory publication, October Magazine. And, when I was at Cooper, I was young, and really young and really disillusioned when I got there. I was doing a ton of art, but I was also really scared and freaked out about this idea of gallery and the white cube and how it was very, didn't reach a lot of audiences, which is something that I was really interested in as well. I felt, it was quite stifling to a certain extent. It scared me, and also I just became quite disillusioned. And I had the ability to take this class with a professor. As we know, professors can truly change your perspective at any given time. And this one did. Douglas Crimp had a seminar called Mourning and Militancy that I took in my junior year at college, and essentially it was about gay visibility and the AIDS crisis, and how essentially there was kind of a gay plague that was genocidal, specifically in this case to America, other places as well, but for us he brought it in through the discussion of art, its intersection with activism, and also the reality of what was happening right around us. Young, wonderful, brilliant people were dying. And I took the class, and I started going to ACT UP probably 3 weeks later. It really brought up something in me that I thought was a little bit larger than myself and what I was actually working on in my studio. So I joined ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And really activism in a more profound sense is related to empathy and walking in other people's shoes, or walking for people in their shoes. Was that me?
No.
Whoa. Somebody was mad. That was, I don't know, maybe that was helpful. Wake up. This particular image is from Grand Fury, which is an amazing collective. But I wanted to go through some of the highlights of my experience in activism, mainly through my own experiences of getting Well, arrested quite a number of times, and also sort of the tactics that we took that were also related to art became incredibly important for the aesthetics of art, actually. So there's Grand Central Station during, rush hour. So those were direct actions. We took a lot of direct actions. And then covert actions were really important too. That's the back of a taxi cab, and it says men use condoms or beat it. So you'd be like, boop, thanks for the ride, and go off, and that would be there for the next person who got into the cab. Wall Street protesting the price of AZT. AZT was one of the only drugs available at that time, which was ridiculous, and it was so incredibly expensive and elitist. And Wall Street was profiting, of course. So we did a giant die-in, which is quite self-evident. You lay down and you metaphorically die for other people and people that you know. And it was actually one of the actions where we got inside, some people from Treatment and Data got inside and for the first time ever stopped the ringing bell 5 minutes late. It delayed it 5 minutes, and they chucked down thousands of these dollar bills that were also designed by Grand Fury that said, white heterosexual men can get AIDS, don't bank on it. Can't get AIDS, don't bank on it. So, they chucked them down to the stockbrokers. We stopped the bell from ringing. We were outside. And about a week later, they actually lowered the price of AZT. So we started to realize direct action with this urgency was actually making a difference. So we continued on. People continued on. Stop the Church was one of the scariest things I ever did, but one of the most exciting protests I took part of. In St. Patrick's Cathedral, the Cardinal John O'Connor was the archdiocese who was, of course, against abortion, homosexuality, contraception, and AIDS. So ACT UP and WHAM, the Women's Health Action and Mobilization, got together and we did this giant protest outside and inside the cathedral. That was the scariest thing, doing a die-in, laying down in pews and in the runway up to John Cardinal O'Connor, laying down dead, where they had to take us out in cots slowly. It took about an hour for them to get us all out. It was important for us to get news, media, anything we could, any means necessary. Posters, direct action posters. This is one I'm the most proud of and was also one of the scariest, where we went in front of the Holland Tunnel to, as a metaphor, to talk about abortion rights. And the Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel during morning rush hour, which, I don't know if you've ever been to New York or any kind of rush hour, that was intense. So we chained ourselves together, there's about 140 of us, and we, in different contingents, went out, laid down in front of the tunnel, carried away in a big paddy wagon, lots of fun. This was also the Waldorf Astoria, where we all rented rooms, and then Waldorf Astoria is a big place where presidents, go and stay when they're in town in New York. Bush was there, so we did an action where we rented rooms, and then we laid down the banners. This is Los Angeles, World AIDS Conference. There's World AIDS Conference all around the country, and this one was in Los Angeles, and this was probably the largest contingent of people. They arrested all of those people, me included. So that was it was a very large statement. I was also part of a contingent called DVTV, Damned Interfering Video Activists. Now, video activists were super important in this movement because they protected us. We filmed everything. They were for us. And they would help us when we went to court as well. And I was also a filmmaker at Cooper, and I did a lot of documentary filmmaking, so I used all their facilities to edit together these videos. Let me see if this will just play. Just a little quick, give you a little quick idea of what this was. This was actually protesting the Cook County Hospital in Chicago, because not only did they have no ward for women with AIDS, they only had about 10 to 12 beds for women with AIDS, which was crazy because there were hundreds of women with AIDS that were actually undiagnosed, going undiagnosed, and untreated for fear. So this looks like a big mess, and it totally was. Chicago police, many police, wore gloves, masks, humiliating us as if you would catch it through touch or through the mask. And they were very violent. A lot of officers were really violent as well. But you know, that's just sort of give you a little taste of the actual experience and the intensity. But it translates when you actually see a video, something like this, you kind of get, it's a little bit of a shock and awe experience, I think, that a lot of people needed to be aware of what the hell was going on at that time. Huge sense of urgency. So this is also a collective I was in called Gang, and we were also making artworks that were sort of, you know, you could just read them from afar and kind of at least be compelled to understand what was going on. And then I was a co-founder of a group called Fierce Pussy. And this was an amazing collective of women. We literally just had a typewriter, and we went, and I'm going to use the word, we went to the Xerox machine, now that copy, you know, copy place, FedEx, and printed out these words, these derogatory words that were helping us to reappropriate this derogatory sentiment towards us. It was a very empowering experience to sort of take away the shame, at least through community action and some kind of prideful juxtaposition, which, you know, in that case, it's like, you can't get mad at a little kid for being a muff diver, right? So we would go out at night. Fierce Pussy continues for the people that live in New York. Zoe Leonard was part of it, Jean Collar-Musto. And that's a really brilliant picture I took because we just didn't do a lot of documentation. But we'd all go out at night so we wouldn't get arrested, you know, with our buckets, hiding behind posts. And then you're like, all right, then you'd wheat paste and, you know, do your thing, do our thing. So this is all to say that art started for me to become a way of having direct action. Because I was an artist. I needed art in my life, and right at that point was channeling it through activism. The collective process really, you know, it gives you power, inner power. I was living in sheer fear and shame about my life and who I was, or I didn't know who I was at that point. I was closeted. And just, you know, being a part of this group helped me to understand how important it is to work collectively and also have community. through art, actually. Here's some images too that were, Grand Fury was an incredible source of inspiration and really, like it says down there, harnessing visual power with extreme measures and a visually collective voice. Sometimes they were extreme and people got totally offended, but it did bring them in. So you'd be like, all right, I don't know if I like this, but I'm looking, and I'm looking again, and I'm looking again. So sometimes those extreme measures really do have a huge impact on people. And, it really was a sense of urgency. People were dying right and left. I went to many, many, many funerals during that period of time. And so you're like, all right, I'm going to go get arrested in the street because this has to be, people have to become aware of this. Reagan didn't utter the words AIDS his whole presidency. These two pieces I did when I was in Cooper Union. My end of the year show ended up being very political. My art teacher, Hans Hacke, actually, I had him as an art teacher, and I was so pissed because he gave me a C. Because I did this really crazy, outlandish show that I even, invited my grandparents to. They saw it and they were like, "Ooh, Susan's really changed her, her mode of operandi here. No more landscapes? What's going on?" I made these I made many pieces. This one was a shirt, poster, and then I made this one, which I'm really proud of. And the reason I'm showing it to you is not because it's a fantastic piece of design. It's because it's so ugly. So in the subways, now they've changed, it's digital, but there was these slots in the subways where you could, interchange advertisements. And so what I designed was a public service announcement, discussing women with AIDS, and and I wanted to make it so ugly that it wouldn't be taken down by the police because they could spot them a mile away. But this one stayed up because it was uggo. It looked like it was made by the government. So that was very helpful. Okay, new quick transition. So life went on. I did activism. I started to really become involved in editing documentaries, one for PBS. Here, I'm going to try this. That is a still from A Question of Equality, Culture Wars. This is an artist I worked for, Robert Gober, fabricating his artwork. And this is one of the first pieces I showed. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm showing you this. But I did. It's called Cake Bed, from the book Bless the Beast and the Children. Talking about a bunch of things, we don't have to go into that. But so life was going good. I was showing, it was like, this was my, I was really like kind of doing very well in the gallery world. And but then this happened. So the paradigm shift happened. I even had a solo show at Stefan Stuck's gallery 4 days before these towers fell. And everybody has a very personal experience and connection to 9/11. I have mine. I know people. It's like a domino effect. Everybody was affected throughout the world. Changed our laws. We were watched. The Patriot Act. Xenophobia was like full force. Everything shifted, including my own awareness of who the hell I am, what am I doing, and why am I living here? I don't know, everything, not to get too deep, but so this is my handy chart of the paradigm shift. It's also quite ugly, but it does show you the complete destabilization, complete disorientation, your hope for transformative learning, and then some kind of reorientation. And after this happened, I decided that I had to, if I was gonna die, because you really did feel like you were gonna die, or something was looming, like something was amiss. And so I decided, that's it, I'm going to upstate New York. I'm gonna get this farmhouse that I wanted to make into an art farm and residency, which I did. I hope at the end I can talk to you about what we did here. And it's not just to show off my house in upstate New York. It's a dump, you know, but it's my dump. And so this was a place that I was able to start reflecting on making my work in a different setting, which I think you always need to do. You need to reevaluate where you are and where the space you live in. And thank God for that horrible lending, that brought down all the banks, because they let somebody like me get a mortgage, that made no money. But thank God, because I got this house, and, well, the bank has this house, but, whatever. Anyway, so I started really self-reflecting. I was, again, disoriented, and I started thinking about myself in relation to all of the things I had done. I didn't really mention this before, and I don't talk about this a lot, but through lots of therapy, during that period of time of activism, I was queer bashed by, beaten up by a group of people. My lover and I were, and that was one of the most sort of humiliating, destabilizing experiences. But I did have my community to help me through it with anger. But I still didn't realize how you kind of compartmentalize those traumas away. The reason I'm saying this to you is because it comes up later in sort of the reflection of some of the work I'm doing now. But also that self-reflection helped me to think about people who inspire me. One of those people is Octavia Butler. And I love this quote from her. I began writing about power because I had so little. And I was like, yep, thank you. And her work is so amazing because she really does. It's scary how seeing into the future she did, and her relationships with these black female characters that were empathic, and also trying to find inner power. So I was thinking a lot about her, and I was thinking about what a freaking angry person I was. I was able to sort of use that with activism, but only to a certain point. I was pissed off about being a woman. I was pissed off that why did I, not attend any of my dad's poker games? Why didn't I, why did I have to not wear a shirt any longer past a certain point? Why couldn't I play football anymore? Why did these packages come that were wrapped up only for my dad to see, these naughty packages? And I just was like, I got some shit I gotta work on. This is like, I had major penis envy. For lack of a better term, I just did. And I was trying to sort of identify it, and I started to work that into my artwork, channeling that power from people like Octavia Butler. There's so many. I started looking through all my source material. I'm a huge researcher, source material person. I've gathered source material since I've been a kid. And the weird thing was that I was like looking through all my source material, I'm like, wow, there's a really reoccurring theme in my source material. It has a lot to do with, passageways, feats of engineering, power, lots and lots of power. And so that's a power tower. And also porno. So that was, well, it became some of my source material. This porno was the, the soft porn that I used to look at when I was a kid. My dad had it hidden away. He had stacks and stacks of porno hidden away in his, office space downstairs. And I would secretly go into that office space, memorize how everything was set up, make sure I've got that all set, take it all out, look at those magazines, memorize them, put it all back very carefully, like no one knew I was here, go back into my room and draw them, and then shamefully crumple them or burn them and bury them. So like, wow, okay, that's okay, something to analyze there, important. So again, source material. Of course, Courbet, this image which has influenced many, many people, and also trigger warning, I hope everything's, we're all adults here, but also Tom of Finland. Tom of Finland was a gay leather daddy who used to draw very erotic, homoerotic imagery, illustrations, really exact imageries that were super hot. Man, woman, it's just like they were really hot. And so I was like, well, again, another complete inspiration in my life, Audre Lorde, that brilliant quotes, which he's had many of, your silence will not protect you. So I was like, okay, this is leading somewhere. So I started to think about collage, which is the most, I think, powerful, one of the more powerful venues to start juxtaposing ideas and making your own reality. I mean, it literally is, if you've collaged before, it is like playing God, or in my case, goddess, where you are trying out different juxtapositions. And I was like, well, I'm going to start infusing these women with sources of power. Just be super literal about it. Like, why the hell not? Super literal. So that's what I started to do. I call it, in a way, queering of space, queering of form. I do want to talk about the word queer, too. Queering, what does that mean? To me, it is one of those things where, we use it a lot, and it has different meanings for different people. And one of the meanings that comes out with the word queer for me, or queering, is the sort of unknowable. It is that space in between things. It is the non-binary. It is the undefinable. And when you do actually start to define it or try to stabilize that meaning, you lose it. So you have to be okay with not really knowing necessarily, but intuitively knowing you are going outside of a boundary that maybe breaks rules or doesn't, but is a form of resistance, rebellion, and or just something you've never really seen before. So I think queering, or using the word queer, is a very, very useful tactic and useful word at this point. So back to what I was starting to do, which was, collage these women together. And then I started the empowerment series. This is a very small drawing that I did called Power Bush. And although she doesn't look small, my God, it's like, wow, she's really big on that screen, but nonetheless. So juxtaposing, the Hoover Dam. These are just some quick, older works where I would really work with scale to try to make the impossible real in some way, some kind of fusion with landscape and power and engineering. So I made Hoover. I got a chance to go to Skowhegan in 2004, and just a little side note too, my sweet dad, at this point we were past coming out and homophobia and all that stuff that, is just terrifying. He drove up before I went to Skowhegan, which is up in Maine, with his giant porno collection and gave it to me. I was like, I love you, Dad. I just meant so much to me. And so I brought it all to Skowhegan. They're like, what the hell is this girl doing with a stack? And so I did Hoover at Skowhegan. But what I realized when I went there, I was like, God, I'm using these small little ladies, and I'm using, photos that men have cropped and use as their form of desire. And the first thing I did was, even though that is from actually a woman I remember from pornography, I made her giant. So she's literally that size. So that is accurate. And so these women became towering above you like giants. They were dwarfing their forms of engineering and power, which was a really nice way to really just, felt good, I felt good doing it. I would disco dance around them at night, invite people over, we'd dance around them. And often what I would do in most of my, these large drawings is wherever I was located, I would try to use whatever engineered experience I was near. This is a train trusser from Skowhegan that I then made into a drawing called Choo Choo. And I'm very proud of Choo Choo. The other thing, though, this is really important for you to get a good look at, but which I'm really allowing for that, is I started to realize that I wanted to frame my own women. So I started to take pictures of my, my muse, or my partner at the time. She was like, okay, all right, here we go. So I started to use, but that the act of using my own person really just gave me that amount of control that I really needed to progress. I like showing scale, size, and she also, I'm very proud of this because Nicole Eisman and A.L. Steiner, who are very good friends of mine from New York from years ago and continue to be, but they curated a show called Ridiculous, and Choo Choo became their mascot. So it's very, well, thank you. She's traveled the world, that Choo Choo, as she should, as a train trestle does. Again, locating myself, I would travel back and forth to the George Washington Bridge always. Also, you could use the acronym George Walker Bush, who was our president at the time. Collaging for scale. And then, whoops, what am I doing here? Collaging for scale, that became the Rainbow Highway. Detailed version. And so I was very, very interested in using, which is so sadomasochistic, colored pencil. Why? But I don't know, I did it. Another hurdle. I also I love the idea of making colored pencil look like painting. And so I feel like that was also part of my, my desire or my hurdle. There's a good, that's a terrible photo, but a good scale photo. The BP refinery in Los Angeles, California. I started teaching at UCLA as a guest artist. Nancy Rubens retired, and so I started working, teaching sculpture there, of all things. I would pass this BP refinery, and she became Complicated Bush. There's a detail, in case you can't see that very well. Seems a little blurry, but anyway. And then there she is at Stephen Freeman Gallery. Okay, a few more. I gotta go quicker, don't I? Planes, very important. This is cockpit. Which I'm not even going to tell you a story about this one. It's just, okay, you know, I've done enough storytelling. The Westminster Abbey, very famous. Okay, here we go. Became Westminster Panties. Which was really fun because often, you know, because she's so, you know, kind of obscured, most people would come and they're like, wow, that's such a beautiful rendering of the inside of that cathedral. And then all of a sudden they'd be like, whoa. That's something I was, you know, okay. And then, you know, run away. So here we go. More stuff. Collaging. I should move through these quicker. So particle accelerator. Let's see, hold on. And then it's important for me to talk about how the collaging has also just become a really important thing for me to be able to do just in and of itself. This is Blue Nebula that's taken from the Wilson Observatory in Pasadena, California. There's We, Happy We, that became Double Trouble. The Pantheon. A golden ratio, 8 shuttles, more recent. I'm saying a lot, right? Aren't I? I gotta stop saying right? No more And Hoover 3, which was part of Cock, Paper, Scissors, a really great exhibition, it's actually a really amazing book. And most recently, right in the studio here at Oakdale, Striking Perspective. I had to do one here too. It was just like I had to. So, peepholes, glory holes, cockpits. So, completely fascinated, as most people are, with Marcel Duchamp, in particular, État Données. And if you can see it in real life, it's amazing. You know, it is not only unbelievable. He made it over 20 years of time, but as you look through it, the peephole, you were to see this, which was at once completely fascinating and horrifying all at the same time. You know, it's that seduction, repulsion that I think these, you know, these kinds of works can do, and he was certainly a master at it. And I started thinking about making my own peepholes or glory holes, or, you know, again, like, you know, the glory hole, I'm assuming we all know what a glory hole is, not only to make glass, but is also used to, you know, have autonomous sex. I was like, you know, what would a female glory hole look like? What would a feminized glory hole look like? So I did, this is my first one that I experimented in my place in upstate New York, because I could drill through all the walls there, whatever I wanted to do. This is from the Galactic Glory Hole series, and this is Kitty Portal. So when you look through that opening, on the other side you saw an image of a kitten knitting. Which is, you know, it's like, come on, right? All right. But the idea that people, I mean, men, women are very, very visual, but female sexuality is also really, really depending on visual. It is internal. It is very hard to know when there is arousal, other than up through here, and what you know, how that transpires. So I like the idea of screwing with optical space, through a painting, what that might mean. This is a painting called Memories of the Future, and through it you saw a disco ball. Disco balls to me are very, very special. They have a lot of significance for me, and I'll go into that in a second. But this is Glow, Gone Living Out West, which is actually when I did go living out west. That's my car that broke down all the time. And through that little peephole, you would again see the disco ball. To me, the disco ball really represents an unstoppable celebration. It's an object of hope and possibility. And I think it remains that in different ways for different people. Commonwealth and Council is a place that I showed at quite a few times. It's a very special space. California and LA is filled with incredible spaces, alternative spaces, spaces in living rooms, garages, a place like Commonwealth and Council, which was constantly expanding depending on the architecture. They'd break through to another side of the building and you'd do something in there. So he allowed me to do what I really wanted to do, which was this new work called the Rainbow Control Room, which is this triptych. It's actually 3 pieces of plywood that I painted on to create, that mimicked the 2001 Space Odyssey film still. And inside the hole, the 3-inch hole, was a curated video series I did. Sorry about this, but it's a terrible video, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of what was going on. So it's a little lowbrow, but whatever. That seems to be how I'm rolling today. So you'd look inside the painting to see other people's objects, other people's videos that they actually curated for the painting itself. So, oh, jeez. I knew I was going to do that. That's slanted. It's fine. Let's stop this anyway. So these are the people that I curated inside of the hole, and you couldn't see anything but their actual video, and issues of trans identity, galactic space, queer utopic space, music videos, and I either collaborated with them or they sort of concentrate on what would go inside those paintings. So you'd go into the gallery and view, and it was on a loop. Here's some stills of things that were inside. And then adjacent to that was a drawing called the Disco Cockpit. The Disco Cockpit was it's kind of like I guess you'd say a little bit of a self-portrait, because it's very much about my sort of a journey that I'm on, that I feel like I am on, a perpetual journey that I am on. And the horizon is either a sunset or a sunrise. And the pilot could be anybody, the viewer could be anybody. It's about trying to find new beginnings, new hopes, new dreams, reformation of how we live our lives, and getting rid of the things that might make us feel shameful, or just moving on to different things, dealing with mourning. Anyway, so to me that was like a scape of possibility. And that too had a whole peephole in it that I drilled into the wall, where you'd look through to another collage that I made. This is called Blue Cockpit. It's a really small, it's now called X Blue Cockpit because that person is my ex who's in there. So you got to adjust to things. And this is Missing Men. Um, Missing Men was a mock-up for that large disco drawing, but then I thought this worked just on its own, and I didn't want to be landing on a woman. I wanted it to be open to the viewer to insert themselves into that kind of a vision. And then in the other room was a very large drawing of a stone called Amazonate, and another collage called Holding Colony. Amazonate is a stone that was legendary to mythically. Amazon women warriors always had them in their pocket when they would go into battle. But it carries the metaphysical powers, and this is something I actually do believe in, is the sort of the power of geology and the living stones that are below us and around us have power. I'm not all woo-woo, but I just, it's something that I really think about. And this one is about being fearless. So another sort of really important part of just moving through the world is being fearless, creating work that scares you and people might not like, people might love it, but doing what is true to yourself. So it is a stone of integrity and fearlessness. This is Holding Colony. All right, this is another show I did at the Angels Gate Cultural Center, which is this really amazing place at the end of Los Angeles. It's literally the port of Los Angeles where all of the goods come in. And it's a historical building. It used to be Army barracks. And the show marked 15 years since 9/11. So I had a meditation ceremony there in commemoration of that. But also, this is inside the space as well. Using sort of an inspiration by the incredible Jay DeFeo, The Rose, which was the 1-ton painting that they had to cut through a wall to get out. A painting that took many, many years to make. Inspired by that, I made the Rainbow Warrior paintings. The Rainbow Warrior painting, which was an homage to the many people that died in the Pulse nightclub massacre. And the paint is house paint that I went to Home Depot, and you know how you can get those samples, you can kind of design your own color. It's so great, it's like save so much money. So each one was sort of designed for that in remembrance of that person. And I also, they gave me permission to drill through the building. It was very touch and go because historical building, they don't like that. But here are the galactic glory holes, the color fields. They didn't let me drill on that side, but here's a detail. And here's a detail of, what it looks like in those holes. So back to this Rainbow Warrior paintings, this is kind of more of a detail, but you would go up to the painting itself, the viewer could go up to the painting itself, look through the hole, and look out, even though this is it was a windy day, so I got a terrible, photo of this, but you were able to view through the building onto the port of Los Angeles. So sort of like an alternative to mourning, sort of a hopeful alternative to the world outside, and how, well, I think that's a good way of putting it. So there it is, and it had in front of it what I do. I make a lot of ritual stumps. These stumps are for the use of anybody to either sit on and look at paintings or meditate on. Each one goes through a ritual ceremony with myself in my studio, and then I put it out into the world for the use from other people. And they, can represent anything to anybody: protection, meditation, forms of declaration. And then lastly, the black crystal, which is also representative of the shadow self. So it's a mimicry of a crystal, top to bottom, that I made in clay and then I cast. And it's sort of to acknowledge the shadow self, which the Jungian philosophy talks about, the acknowledgement of the good and the bad of us all, the things we hide from people, the things we are proud of. And without the acknowledgement of both, you really do run into a lot of you can potentially run into a lot of emotional barriers. So sort of the full acknowledgement of those things, those shadows that kind of creep up at any given time, at any given age, depending on, what you've gone through, your history. This is sort of like a representative of that acknowledgement. Ooh, what a terrible. I should have done trigger warning. Trigger warning! Oh my God, crystal. I'm like, oh, this really important thing. The shadow self. Speaking of the shadow self, here we go. So here we go. This is the next paradigm shift. Trump was elected on November 8th, Election Day 2016. And that also represents a huge paradigm shift for many people, including myself. I'm going to get out of his face for now and just talk about, I have heard it spoken, and I think of that election as a psychological 9/11. Everything shifted. And I remember the day after, I was so afraid to get out of my bed. I hadn't felt this way in so long. And not since I got beat up, actually. The shame, the fear of my lives and the lives of others that I loved and know and taught were really, truly at risk. So I couldn't get out of my bed. I couldn't talk to my students very well. It was a very, very difficult time. And I know, I can imagine it's shared by some people. And I apologize if I'm offending some people that support Trump. But this is just, well, it's my talk, so I can talk about this. But I did have the incredible experience of listening a few days later to another inspirational hero, Angela Davis. She spoke at Chicago's Rockefeller Memorial Chapel, and she spoke hard truths that were they were so intense, but really important to look at and listen as soon as possible. One including that 53% of all white women voted for Trump. 8% of black women voted against Trump. So it kind of shook your world, my world, as a white woman. It was embarrassing, shocking, fucked up. You can edit that out if you want. So one of the things I wanted to read to you, which is so important, which is what helped me move on to this next series of works, was this. She quoted from an open letter to my sister, Miss Angela Davis, by James Baldwin. The enormous revolution in black consciousness which has occurred in your generation, my dear sister, means the beginning or the end of America. Some of us, white and black, know how great a price has already been paid to bring into existence a new consciousness, a new people, an unprecedented nation. If we know and do nothing, we are worse than the murderers hired in our name. If we know, then we must fight for your life as though it were our own, which it is, and render impassable with our bodies the corridor to the gas chamber. For if they take you in the morning, they will be coming for us that night. Ooh, it makes me a little weepy when I think about it. So that changed my mind. I was like, that's it. I have to do something. I have to make, I didn't feel relevant. I was like, what the hell am I gonna make artwork about? But there was a Women's March, which is certainly noted. the day after the inauguration, which P.S. had a larger attendance than his actual inauguration. Woo, woo, woo. Thank you. I like that. It's always good to clap. It's very expensive. And so I was like, well, what is one of the hardest things I can actually think about doing, but I really want to do and always have wanted to do, is to feminize the Washington Monument. So how the hell do you feminize that thing? I mean, like, pick something. It's like drawing in colored pencil. Like, really? You know, just try something a little easier. Just a start, you know, but no. So the obelisk, the giant obelisk, which is inspired by the Egyptian obelisk, which is a phallic salutation to the sun god, essentially getting that obelisk as close to God as possible. So the taller it was, the closer you were to God, but also had the, essentially, would be helping in reproduction. I don't know how to say it any other. You get the drift. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I started researching Google Earth maps, and I started looking at the Washington, D.C., and in particular the Washington Monument from above. And this is the image from Google Maps. And I was like, oh my God, hello, there we go. It seems so simple. And it's in between Vesica Pisces, like, oh, damn, this is, okay, here we go. So I created the Goddess Eye View, and was kind of the start of my next important exhibition. There's also leading into what I'm doing here right now for Grantwood in my time here. And I created the show Feminist Alchemy. That is a branch with a lapis stone that represents the throat chakra, which represents giving a person a voice. So I'll just go through these kind of quickly. This is the painting Unmonumental, which is also looking at the obelisk from above, which is gives the illusion of interiority and exterior. Again, kind of like, you know, playing with the equalization or visions of equality. And then turning it on its side also does the same. For me, it does the same. Using the colors, painting on wood was very cathartic. The colors I choose are very personal, and I do believe that it has a lot to do with, you know, the discussion of the complexities of a human being. So the multiple colors are really very important to my process. And the control of wood or painting on wood is very important as well. Here's a view from a corner view of the east side and the west side of it. This is the obelisk on fire, and that's a triptych. This obelisk is sandwiched in between two diamond shapes. And the symbology of a diamond really is, although, you know, you can argue quite Ionic, you know, but two triangles put together. When a triangle is upright, it is the phallus, it represents the phallus. When it's down, it represents the Ionic or the birth canal. So put together creates kind of an equality, in that is at least how I'm using it. I made a dodecagram floor painting, a 12-sided star, which is one of the strongest of those configurations. It is a holistic viewpoint, 12 months out of the year, 12-sided star. And it was sort of a gateway of power, which I then put on top of it these cast branches from the Russian River that I pigmented with in hydrocal plaster in multiple colorful pastels. They're called the faggots. because, you know, reusing that word, reappropriating the word faggot, which is tricky. I don't get a ton of great responses when I use that word still. It's still one of those words that's hard to say. But the word faggot derives from the French word fagot. And fagot meant you were a female, of course, a female who was a burden to society. And you were made to carry branches down to the fire all day, and that was your job because you were unmarried and not presentable as or potentially a married person. So, of course, we use the female to be derogatory to a gay man. And so I'm repurposing those. I am hopefully re-infusing them with power, transforming their meaning. And then on the corner was a painting called The Saint, which represents, kind of leads into my next discussion, and I promise I'll make this quick. The Saint was a disco in the 80s. So each of those squares in the disco ball represent a man who has died of AIDS. I mean, it's like, oh, it's so serious. But it's really supposed to be joyful as well, which disco balls are. This is a collage I made called The Colony of Saints, which is a utopian, you know, a utopian colony. And kind of gives me this heading for the Grantwood Fellowship, which really truly is a gift of time and community. I've met amazing people here, and I've actually have not had in many, many years of my working life time to do my work the way I've been able to do it here. So I'm filled with gratitude. So the Saint, I did a lot of research at the One Archives in LA, which is this amazing gay and lesbian archive through the USC libraries. And I found this blueprint of this disco that was created in 1980 by Bruce Mehlman, who ran the gay baths. And he wanted to create a space that could literally transport you to any place with no physical limits. So he spent $2,000 creating a light design, $2 million, sorry, creating a light design that would go on the top into this dome. And the idea was that the dome itself created the sense of infinite space. So you'd go into the disco and you would, of course, dance your ass off, do, I'm sure, many other things as well. But you were in the universe in a way with no fear and infinite light in space, as if you were, floating through the galaxy. I didn't go, it was before my time, but it was open from, the 80s until 1989, and it closed because of the gay plague. There were so many people dying that they just couldn't upkeep it any longer. But it was legendary, and you'd get an exclusive card. You were invited. Unfortunately, only gay men were allowed to go. It was once a month. You'd spend a weekend there. Just think about that one for a second. And people like Robert Mapplethorpe, they sent out invitations. It was filled with all these different artists would send out invitations. You get an invitation, you'd go to the Saint. The actual dome itself was bigger than the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. Here's a floor plan to the dance floor, which was 5,000 square feet round. So I started to use this as a way to work on some really personal work that I'm working on that's slightly hard to talk about because it's not formed yet, but I'm going to show you some of the images just so you can see what I'm working on here and have so far. I did this painting called Divine Beauty Permeates All Things, And again, I'm trying to work through some issues of old trauma, repurposing my thoughts and feelings, and how does one move past old hurts? You know, these paintings are incredibly cathartic. I almost need to do them every day to help work through many of my, you know, my monkey mind, my monkey minds. And these are all really quite small right now, and I'm making larger ones. But this is going to be the Saint mandala, which will become an actual mandala, which has been a way to work through also trauma. Jungian philosophy worked with mandalas, having patients make them to sort of empower themselves to create their own intentions through these mandalas and this art practice. I could go way more into that, but for lack of time. This is Gateway to the Dance Floor, and there's a detail of it. This is Reframing Perspective, which has a lot to do with geometry, how in the Renaissance they were trying to find the perfection with geometry. And so it's kind of like a discussion of that honoring, but using it for myself. This is Transmutation Raven, which has to do with something that I'm still forming about tribalism. And Octogram, the 8-sided star. There's a detail. All of these are paintings on linen, which I have to tell you, I've never painted on. I've never allowed myself to paint on linen, not only because of the price, but it was intimidating. And it's weird to admit this, but I don't know. I was like, am I deserving to paint on linen yet? You know, is this possible? And so I was like, I have to paint on linen here. Because of its warmth and its intimate nature. I love it as a backdrop. I love the feel of it, and I love its relationship to opaque colors. This is double Merkaba, and you know, Merkaba has been used in different you know, religions and, you know, through sacred geometry, etc. But it is a tool that helps humans reach their full potential. And then this, I'll end with this. I'm sure I don't have time to go into my community engagement and curation stuff, which I really want to do, but I'll have to, you know, talk about it at some other time. But this is a collage I'm working on for a painting. And I just found out that I was, you know, on LinkedIn, you know, you're in a search. And I just found out the government is looking at me right now. I'm like, uh-oh, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. My record has been expunged, so I should be okay. Yeah, so I was going to talk to you about a bunch of things, community engagement, but I don't have enough time, I'm sure. So, to be continued. So there we go. I think because I can't, you know, I have to kind of end it with all these curations. Look at this. This is like Tinder swiping, right? And there you go. So. We probably don't have time for questions.
Well, we do. I mean, I'll just allow people to leave politely if they need to, because this is a little bit long and we like to be respectful. But if you want to stay, Suzanne is definitely open and willing to answer any questions. Before people do leave, if you choose to, I want to thank you all for coming. I didn't introduce myself last time. I'm the director of the Brentwood Art Colony. And you can imagine the wonderful conversations we get to have with Suzanne around. And we're sort of like chatting up, and all of a sudden it's 3 hours later. And it's wonderful. It's one of those great opportunities we have at the Brentwood Art Colony. But I do want to invite you all back on March 5th for Tony Rico's talk, Drawing from Receptivity. He will be our third and final fellow speaking. But feel free to leave, but if you want to stay, are you okay answering a few questions?
If there are any, sure.
Okay, thank you all.
Questions are always it's like, we're all friends though. I mean, you can ask me anything you want. Anything? Yeah.
You mentioned that your color choices are really personal. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more.
Say again?
You were talking about how your color choices are very personal and very meaningful, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little.
Yeah, I think that I think of color in a really, I guess, just emotional way. It really affects my mood. Aesthetically, I think about color schemes, you know, just for beauty's sake. I think that, you know, there's some kind of, there's something about, which I loved about queer community and queer life is sort of the flamboyance and the sort of crazy, out loud and proudness of that. And I think some of that is reflected in, you know, just really going for every color you can actually think about and put together at any given point. That sort of, either you love it or you're like, oh, I like that. You know, it's like, it's kind of, I like to play with that. And I think that these are more personal right now because of the material I'm using, and also it takes me forever to figure out the color scheme of each one, and that is a very cathartic experience for me. So I think that that's where it relates also to the personal with that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, Susan.
Well, you know, it's interesting that I'm reflecting a little bit. Well, I read that in your piece that you sent to me, or I got it on the biography about the saint. Of course, I freaked because, you know, I was of that era, and of course I didn't go, but all my friends did, and the enormity of what that was about, right, in that era. So suddenly the paintings really change when you start painting about the saint.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, in terms of so much of the critique of male power structures, and then here is this saint where only men are allowed.
Yeah.
Yet it's a queer space. So I mean, can you talk about that a little bit, like the choice of that, and just, I mean, obviously it was really a pivotal time because of your activism and all that going on at that time, but to pick that space specifically, I don't know, you know.
I think it has to do with inserting myself into male power. And often, you know, that's what I do to have done to not survive, but, you know, actually participate in the world in a different way. I shapeshift. And so I think that I use that as a way to talk about something pre-AIDS that was more so about freedom and gay freedom. And it's true that that's totally, you know, that's a downside to it. But that's what I'm not, or not a downside, it's just, you know, it's specific. It's very specific to the actual dance club. But I'm using it as a way, well, soon enough, like a mandala. So in mandalas, you assert your own intentions within that framework. So I'm kind of using that as a structure and a representation of freedom and fearlessness and empowerment and the ability to be out. And that was a time period of pure, freedom. It happened to be with gay men, but I also very much identify with gay men. So I found that to be something that compelled me to kind of almost repurpose with my own visions, It is problematic, though. I mean, I have a lot of contradictions in my work as well, and I think that's really important to acknowledge. Some of the women in the work, people have been offended by. Other people have been completely enthralled by. There seems to be, but I'm a walking contradiction, so.
That's there in the work in an interesting way, I think.
Yeah.
It embodies it, yeah.
Also humor, I think that humor is a really important way to get through pain and deep anger. I think the best comedians are probably the most deeply disturbed and have they're overly sensitive to the world. And I too feel overly, not that I'm a stand-up comedian, but overly sensitive, over empathetic sometimes. And so, doing some of the artwork evens that out a little bit or takes it to an extreme, I guess, in some cases. Like Choo Choo. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually really curious about the creation projects that you were talking about at the end. Could you maybe at least talk about, I'm really interested in the house that you kind of made happen in New York.
Yeah. Since we have a teeny bit of time, can I just show you? When on 9/11 happened and I saw this house, hold on, should I just slide it? I was like, that's it. I'm making it into an art camp. So look, I was so happy. We found a dump, but I was so happy in that dump. So we, having gone to Skowhegan and high desert test sites and sort of trying to be inspired by those venues, I really wanted to talk to my community. I wanted to invite them up to be on the land, and I wanted to have people make work outside of the marketplace or the viewer of the commercial, art for money. I mean, that would be great if anybody sold anything, but I really wanted to make a safe space for that. And since we had these 10 acres, I was like, I'm going to make this little hotel into a space for people. So we cleared it out. Oh my God, we burned probably 20 beds. It's 2 floors, 10 rooms total, had mezuzahs outside each door, but beautiful wood floors. And so we cleared everything out and invited people up. We did it for 3 different years, and I hope to do it again and again and again. And people stayed in the farmhouse, they camped outside, they came a week, 2 in advance. We invited them up if they wanted to do a big project. People did projects in sheds, in the woods, and so many amazing people took part in it, unknown, well-known, took part in it. You would take over one of the rooms or collaborate in one of the rooms. You could choose your room. People did wallpaper in the hallway. This is Amy Yost. She did projections. Adriana Farmiga, who's an amazing artist. And A.L. Steiner, who actually I did the kitty portal with. She was on the other side. She had the kitten knitting. Nicole Eisenman drew. And so the space itself was open for people to share and to communicate. And it was absolutely, I don't know, especially if you lived in the city, it was such a it was just an amazing way to let go, be yourself, talk about what it meant to try to sell work, be relevant, all of that shit that you're just like, either everything's going really well, or it used to be going well, or you want it to be going better, and then also just producing artwork that you would maybe never really do according to the architecture that you were in. So that was a really amazing experience. And like I said, I hope to do it again. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could expand upon if you found a relationship between the architectural forms of the painting and sculpture of the stones, the gemstones, and maybe the relationship to some of the man-made power structures. That was kind of interesting. I don't know if there was if you had any thoughts on that, on their relationship.
Well, I'm incredibly interested in, always has been visionary architecture. Have you heard of that kind of visionary architecture? Is architecture that is not necessarily ever made. Buckminster Fuller, he was like a visionary architect, but he made the geodesic dome, and those actually were made. But visionary architects were sort of, they really they took what was in their minds and created what they wanted to, no matter what it would need to be actually made. So I was really, really interested in that, which has a relationship to a lot of my sculptural works. So I'm very interested in geology and the metaphysical powers of geology, but I was also sort of like, they're mined from different places that were like, you just don't know who's mining them. And I sort of wanted to take on making my own crystal as if it were a structure, or I believe it kind of mimics a city. And so I had the control, I had the ability to make it the way I wanted to make it, and infuse it with my own power and thoughts and vision. And and it had a lot more meaning, especially in the meaning to the shadow self and, the analytical part of our lives, whether we do it at any given time, different times, things that spur us on to do it. And during that time, I really needed to be thinking about what was going on in my life that way. Does that answer it all? Kind of the. Okay. That was a hard question. I'm like, oh God, I don't. Oh man. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much for coming.